Hello and welcome to the 2019 CX virtual event, Solving a 4,000-Year-Old Customer Experience Problem. My name is Julia Boyle with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. I have a few administrative details to share with you, and then I will turn things over to our esteemed speakers. First, we would like to thank Bold 360 by LogMeIn for their partnership with today's event. They've been a wonderful thought leadership partner to Argyle and are committed to providing you with valuable content and great overall experience. So thank you again to Bold 360 by LogMeIn. We appreciate you joining us today. We welcome you to stay connected during today's event. For those of you who are active tweeters, please use the hashtag ArgyleCX. You can also find us on Twitter at Argyle Executive Forum, and be sure to join our LinkedIn group, Customer Experience Forum. I also want to take a moment to touch on our content neutrality policy, which we've curated based on the feedback we received over the years from our members. Argyle is proud and protective of this policy as it reflects our commitment to ensure the neutrality and overall value of the content presented at our events. We've worked closely with our speaking faculty to ensure that you receive a set of balanced and neutral viewpoints during the session today, and we appreciate our members' support of this policy. We also have an upcoming CX Leadership Forum on October 17th in Toronto that may be of interest to you. Finally, and most importantly, please submit any and all questions that come up during today's event into the Q&A section of the interface. Following the panel discussion, we have set aside a time for our speakers to weigh in on these questions. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Ryan Lester, the Senior Director of Customer Engagement Technologies at Bold 360 by LogMeIn. We are pleased to have Ryan with us to deliver opening remarks. Welcome, Ryan. Over to you.
Great. Thank you, Julia. And thank you for all of you joining the webinar today. I know the topic of customer experience is a hot one, and really excited to talk through really opportunities to transform your customer experience, both in the way you work and the technology you leverage. But starting out, to kind of set the stage for our panel discussion later, I want to tee up that customer experience isn't new. I'm not sure if anybody on the phone here is a history buff or knows what this thing is I'm showing, but this is actually the first recorded document of a customer service complaint. So this is from the year 1650 BC, and a copper merchant named El Nazir delivered a low-quality copper to a customer named Nanny, who was a long-standing customer. And he received this complaint etched in stone, delivered by messenger across enemy lines. So obviously, a very different world we live in today whenever it comes to how our customers interact with us. But this problem is one that's been around for 4,000 years. And if we were to look at what's written on this tablet stone, I'm sure this resonates with many of you in the audience today or listening today. So for those of you who don't speak Sumerian, the complaints coming from Nanny were really something that we can also see today. Nanny said things like the delivery person was rude, that they ordered one type of product and received a different type of product, that they felt like they were taken advantage of, and so they use words like contempt, and so there's this really interesting kind of example of, even in the earliest days of commerce, customers being frustrated with how they were treated and not feeling like they were being treated appropriately, and then responding accordingly and sending a message that they didn't feel listened to or serviced in the way they were expecting. And so, we can take this as an early example from 4,000 years ago, but it really is very similar to the world we see today, to the challenges we see in how we service our customers, how we support our customers, and how we make them feel like they're being listened to and being serviced. And it's an opportunity, but it also is a challenge. And if I were to fast forward to a more recent example, which once again is very similar in focus, is Saeed recently was traveling on British Airways, and he had a really bad experience. And he voiced his concerns with British Airways. He didn't feel as though British Airways responded accordingly, and he decided to amplify his perspective. And he actually spent $1,000 to sponsor tweets so they would show up as sponsored items in people's feeds. And many of us, not to pick on British Airways, but there's some recent news of British Airways having some strikes. And so there's this kind of challenge of, we have this perpetual problem of meeting customer expectations, delivering a great experience, and if we don't do that, customers are willing to kind of voice their opinions. And whether that be in a direct letter or a chiseled stone or on social media, there's more and more ways for customers to voice their concerns. And while there is certainly a brand impact, there is also an economic impact. And there's a great report by PwC that talks about how there are positive business results that come out of positive experiences. And so for the average customer, when they're having a great experience, that is a reinforcing loop. That drives them to want to buy more, to become a return customer, to be a more loyal customer. So there's value in investing in a great brand experience. And conversely, there's challenges with not doing it. And even really loyal customers, so consumers that say they're loyal to a brand, 1 in 3 say they'll walk away after one bad experience. And I think we all can relate to that. We've all had that frustrating phone call or frustrating email exchange where we just feel fed up. We just don't feel like the brand is listening, our concerns are not being heard, and then therefore we kind of get fed up and just throw up our hands and say, fine, I'll take my business elsewhere. And so there's this economic challenge of creating these great experiences at scale, but supporting the complexity of the way our customers interact with our brands, how they engage with us today. And that's really only becoming more challenging. And furthermore, it's becoming more challenging across more ways of technology. It's not like we engage with our consumers in less ways. So going back to the original example, the only way to convey something was via a chiseled stone. In today's world, there's multiple digital channels. So there's social messaging, there's chat, there's email, there's phone, there's self-service. There's all these different ways that we're engaging with our consumers, and throwing technology at the problem isn't always going to solve it. It's really about combining the right technology with the right experience or the right business process that leads to the right outcome. So let me just walk you through, if we were to take that example of being a copper merchant and bring that into the modern world, what it looks like today in a bad way and what it could look like in really done the right way. So if we take the same example, the same bad experience, and someone comes to our website and maybe they interact with a chatbot or some self-service technology. In the current world, maybe it's a keyword-based interaction or it's highly scripted, and someone asks a question around, the customer says, how do I return my order? I received low-quality copper, and it's not what I ordered. Well, the bot sees words around copper, shipment, order, and it says, oh, I think you want to order some product. And it starts working someone through a flow that's related to an order process versus a customer service process. And so the bot now is promoting buying more when the customer really wants their problem solved. They want to be properly serviced. So by misaligning the customer outcome with the wrong technology, you're even upsetting the customer further. Additionally, you may then start to pull in a live agent or escalate, and the question is, can you actually do that? So if they're having a poor experience, let's say with a chatbot or some piece of technology, then the question becomes, how do we fix that as fast as possible, and when's the right place to bring in a human? And in this case, we're offering to buy more, and they're saying, that's not really what I want, I just want to talk to an agent. But in this channel, this is purely self-service, and now all of a sudden we can't get them to solve their problem, we can't get them involved with the live agent, and therefore, once again, we're upsetting the customer even further. So we have to be careful about how we're applying this technology to really solve these problems in the right way, and also use the right resource for the right problem. When is it best to have the customer self-service versus when is it best to have them deal with a live agent? And what's the impact of that? And so as we think about this, we say, well, we don't want to lose the customer's trust, but at the same time, we're under pressure to support more channels, to be more operationally efficient, to reduce our overall cost of delivery. So how do we best balance this mix between the technology, our employee, and the end customer? How do we help them working better in harmony to create a better customer experience? So let's revisit this example and talk about what's another way. How's another way we could potentially approach this? And so in this case, we say, well, let's bring the bot and the human together to support this customer. So a customer comes in and they come to our website and they're seeing that we have a number of different offerings. And we start a conversation and we say, hey, I'm a bot. We're clear that this is a self-service tool. It's a chat bot. And the chat bot asks them a certain number of questions. What can I help you with? Is it a return? Is it a new order? And the customer says, well, I've received an order. It's not the right thing. It's not the right quality. And the bot says, that's something I can help you with. I can help you with a return. Here's a FedEx number for that return. So it's something that the bot's been set up to do, and they can automate that process. But the person says, no, I don't want a return. I want a full refund, and that's not what I want. The bot's not giving me not helping me solve my problem. And the bot says, well, hold on, that's not something I can help you with. Let me then bring in a human agent. Let me move you from a self-service path to now something that actually requires a human agent, whether it's that the bot's been set up for it or not, or it's something that you want a human involved with because it needs a human touch. And in this case now, we're clear to the customer that we've moved from a self-service workflow supported by a chatbot into a agent-based workflow. So now the screen looks different. We're showing them a picture of that agent or identifying that an agent is there. And we're now having that agent then offer empathy, offer a more complex solution, or maybe working through that customer on that solution. So now the bot is taking the lower value, more repetitive work, and the agent is then freed up to spend more time on higher value work. And so the customer now is happier because, one, they're getting more immediate answers from the bot for those things that are more repetitive, lower value, but then they're also getting better access to an agent because that agent now is freed up to not have to spend time on those low value interactions. So once again, we're starting to optimize the technology with our employees and with our customers to create better outcomes for all of them. The employee is not spending time on low value things. The customer is getting more immediate answers, but also getting better answers from agents because they're freed up to spend more time, to offer more empathy. And so what we can see here is we have these really interesting paths of something delivered by self-service, some things, harmony between the self-service and the agent, and then some things that we focus on purely with our agents. And so we really have this opportunity now with where the technology's shifted to really leverage this in a variety of different ways. It's not a one-size-fits-all, and we don't want to think about it as siloed. We don't want to have a siloed self-service experience that's just jointed and disconnected, but we also don't want to not take advantage of those technologies because it can help us be a lot more efficient and effective. And so this is really the opportunity we have to really start thinking about these three different areas. The opportunity to deliver better self-service, an opportunity to deliver a better harmonious experience between the self-service and the actual agent, and the opportunity to really have our agents freed up to spend more time with customers. And so other things that you can start to think about are, what are problems today that we're solving with humans that we can actually better enable with self-service? One thing that AI technology has brought is a capability around natural language processing. So if a customer is asking things in a variety of different ways, so a customer may say, I have a return, I have something that's not working, I got the wrong product. At the end of the day, those are all the same intent. They're all the same outcome. The customer wants to return something or needs to get the right part. So with that natural language processing, the AI understands that it's all the same outcome. Now it's a question of what's the best way to service that outcome. The AI can ask follow-on questions, so it could say, hey, I need a little more information from you, or there's multiple items in that order, which one are you specifically referring to? So the bot can ask follow-on questions, but you can start to take a multitude of phrasing and interactions from your customer and start to cluster those around key intents. It also helps you to better understand where you should be investing in new technology. So you may be getting 50% of your volume around order inquiry questions. Where is my order? Has it shipped? Do you have a tracking number? So those might be areas you want to go after first. Versus instead, maybe it's more questions around your different offerings or services. So customers may be asking questions around a new service or bundling of services or which product's the right one for them. And maybe that's where you want to invest in more technology to help self-service those customers. So another interesting capability with AI is that because it's intent-based, it helps you better understand what are the key outcomes or objectives that customers are really asking, and how frequently are they asking them. Unlike keyword search or keyword interactions, which really don't give you those intents, it's just telling you the type of word someone is using. And the example I like to give is, if I say I need a book for a flight, or I need to book a flight, those are two very different intents with very similar words. And so AI really helps you better understand what are the problems your customers are trying to solve, and how frequently are you needing to solve those, and how good a job are you doing that today. Furthermore, it also really helps with this transition. Another interesting aspect of AI is that it's not just customer-facing, but also can be a technology that faces your employees. So think about, you get all these common requests that come in. Maybe you have some more complex workflows. You have multiple order management systems or multiple customer databases. AI can also be facing your employees in the background and really helping to assist them behind the scenes. So when a customer mentions a certain product or service or intent, the AI can be providing information to your agents in the background that help them work smarter, not harder. So if it can provide them articles or suggestions or frequently asked items. So it's basically there helping and assisting them along the way. And then employees can provide that AI feedback. They can say, yeah, that was an interesting suggestion, but it wasn't really quite right, or it needs to be updated, or actually I preferred to give them this answer. So it can also be a way of collecting feedback from your employees on what's working best, what's not, and doing that at scale. So it doesn't require you to have a human supervisor sitting over their shoulder. That AI assistant is there helping them along the way. So it's helping them be more productive, it's helping them ramp faster, it's helping them really be more efficient in the work they do every day. And then finally, there's really this opportunity around making your agents feel empowered. And so, another great opportunity here is if an agent says, hey, I keep getting this request, this comment or item keeps coming in from customers, they can tag that item and say, this really should be something self-service should manage. So 10 times a day, I'm getting this input. I just don't feel like this is a good use of my time. And I want to suggest this be something we should really automate into the future. Or I keep using this as a reference article and customers are happy with it. In the future, we should tag this as something that we should turn into an automated workflow. And so the nice thing is this is all part of their standard workflow. So as they're interacting with a customer, they can tag these things as they're wrapping up a conversation. And once again, help them feel more efficient and effective and empowered that they're providing better ways to work. So it's a really great opportunity to, one, make your customer feel more empowered, that you're giving them more immediate outcomes, but also make your employees feel more empowered and that you're helping them do their job better. And focus on really high-value work versus low-value repetitive work. And once again, there really is this business opportunity here. This is something that isn't just about cost savings, but also about really driving your top line. So, there's research out there that shows that 86% of buyers are really willing to pay more for companies that deliver great experiences. And we see this. We see this in brands like Apple, where a premium product, a premium experience, customers are willing to pay for. So think about where there's an opportunity to take the technology, take your employees, and deliver those better customer experiences. And it isn't going to be a one-size-fits-all. It's really going to come down to your business, but there's lots of opportunity. And really it's about finding the right place to start that journey for yourself. And know that this is a journey. We've been working on this journey for 4,000 years. So we're not going to fix it overnight, but it's really about addressing that next step. Where's that next opportunity to improve? Just like El Nadir did with Nanny, he wants to go address that problem. In his case, he did not, and we actually found out that he went out of business eventually, and I think it probably was because of poor customer experience. But think about where are those opportunities for you really to reinvent how you engage with your customer and deliver those better outcomes. Because history repeats itself, and if you don't, then inherently one of your competitors will, and they will disrupt you and end up stealing your customers. And unlike back in this day, 4,000 years ago, switching costs are lower than ever. So it's easier and easier for companies to switch from one provider to another. So think about where are those opportunities where you can deliver a better experience, a more seamless experience, and do it through a mixture of technology and through your employees. And finally, the last point is that it is that every experience matters. It only takes one bad outcome, as we saw with the British airline example, for a customer to become upset and go from being an advocate of your brand to really a detractor of your brand. And there's more and more ways for customers to get that message out. So think about whether it's the middle of the night and they have a question about a product or a service, or it's your busiest day of the year. How do you leverage technology to be more scalable, more approachable, and deliver a better brand experience across all the ways that you're engaging with your customers today, but also into the future? Once again, it's not becoming less complex, it's really becoming more complex in how we engage with our customers, and their expectations are only becoming harder and harder with wanting immediate outcomes and immediate results. So it really comes down to how can you leverage technology to deliver that better customer-facing experience and make your employees feel more productive and empowered. And this leads us now into the next section of our webinar, where I'm going to invite Julia to come back and bring in our panelists, and we're going to bring some real-world examples of this and some challenges and opportunities they've faced in creating better customer experiences. So Julia, to invite you back, why don't you bring our panelists on and we can start down the road of getting some more real-world examples.
Thank you, Ryan. As a reminder to all of our listeners, please submit any questions you have in the Q&A interface. And following the panel discussion, we will have set aside time for our speakers to weigh in on these questions. We'll now kick off our panel discussion titled Solving a 4,000-Year-Old Customer Experience Problem. We're going to start off with some brief introductions. So, David, we'll start with you.
David, you might be on mute. We can't hear you.
I am here. Hi, guys. David Farris, responsible for customer experience across the EA Sports portfolio of games. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, David. Mary?
Hi, I'm Mary Salvatierra. I am the Senior Creative Director for Customer Experience at Comcast. Thanks for having me as well.
Thank you. So next we have Jeriel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jeriel Thornburg-May. I'm the Worldwide Director of Customer Experience at Lenovo. Just for context, for our later examples, Lenovo provides technology solutions worldwide, so you may know us best for our personal computer products, but a lot of my focus is actually on the data center. But our experiences are across Motorola phones, PC products, and data center, which is servers.
Thank you, Jeriel. And our final panelist, Ryan. Ryan?
Brian, you might also be on mute.
Hey, it's Ryan Winia. I am the Senior Director at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois, Montana, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas. I lead our digital strategy and user experience.
Thanks, guys. So today's panel will also be moderated by Ryan, so the floor is yours.
Wonderful, thank you. So I'm really excited about, we have a great cross-section in our panelists today of, companies that are well-established, and companies that are, continue to evolve and drive industries forward. We have a good cross-section of very core to tech, more consumer-focused, and then things like healthcare. So I think we have a really good, broad cross-section of kind of the representation of the world of customer experience. And so to start us off, I want to kind of enter the waters talking about I highlighted this example that we had of a metal merchant, a copper merchant, and one of their bad customer experiences. So I want to start out with talking about what are some challenges that result from a change in customer experience, how you manage that, and what are some things that were learned through it. So Jeriel, can you start us off and talk a little bit about an example of change that you saw related to customer experience and how you managed that situation and what you learned from it?
Yeah, sure, Ryan. Thank you. And I think it's relevant to your presentation actually, because and maybe relevant to all of us in one way or another. But I find in these forums that we have customer experience people attending who have lots of different jobs and lots of different areas of focus. But one thing that we have in common, I think, is trying to help customers solve a problem, and particularly when it's a service-related problem. So just like your example, the one that I'm going to come up with here, is how we support our customers when something goes wrong in the data center. So if you think about a data center environment, I bet you a lot of people on the call don't think about data center environments. So let me say it this way. When you take a picture of yourself, when you take a selfie and then you save it to the cloud, it's going into a data center somewhere. And that somewhere is probably somewhere remote on a Lenovo server somewhere in a remote location in a warehouse full of servers. So that's where your selfie is. When one of those servers has an issue, the question is, how do you support the customer in that scenario? So it's a B2B example, and it's a worldwide example. So one change that we made in supporting our customers is we said, hey, a lot of these data centers are in really remote locations. If something goes wrong, how do we get there fast and help fix it? And speed is important, right? Because if you're hosting everybody's selfie and they can't get access to their selfie because the server doesn't work, that's one thing. But when you're talking about data that's owned by a company, it can be a very expensive problem. So fortunately, we have over 99% reliability. But in that 1%, when something goes wrong, how do we fix it? So the change that we made is we tried to have more remote support because it's just simply faster, and obviously it's cheaper for remote support. And we said, hey, if you're an employee in a data center, you're an IT professional, and surely you'd rather self-serve, have some remote support, fix this thing faster versus having someone fly out potentially to a very remote location and get there to fix. So, long story short here, the change that we made was moving more toward remote support. And what we learned is that does not work for all of our customers. So even though they're very technical, even though they can access they can access chatbots, e-support, we have a segment of customers who wants a human being, to show up on site and fix a technical problem. So yeah, I guess the learning there is, even if you ask a customer, would you rather have it faster, they'll say yes. If you ask if they'd rather have it cheaper, they'll say yes. But when it comes right down to it, sometimes the customer cannot fix a technical problem on their own, and they need a human being. So we have to both support kind of in a human being on an airplane kind of way, and also ongoing in an e-support kind of way as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a wonderful example of bringing it to life and something we can all relate to, of like, we want the answer now, so we want to know, is there an outage or something wrong, or just, help me know that something's not working right, or help me then escalate accordingly or shift accordingly to figure out what is wrong if you don't know what's wrong. And I think that the problem is that if we try to use the same solution for that, then we have an outage or something big that's happened, and we're trying to support 10,000, 50,000, 1 million customers all trying to get the same answer at once. And where's the best place to do that? Or conversely, we have one customer who has a real problem and they can't get through to get that solved. And so it's this balance of self-service when they want it or when it works best, but then having these other paths of engagement or interaction that are more suited to the appropriate problem. So I think you've set the stage really well. David, I'm wondering if you have some additional comments or examples you'd like to bring in regards to challenges you've seen and changes in customer experience.
Yeah, I think one of the ones that's more prominent in my mind recent is when we experimented with an AI chat, which we thought would create some efficiencies, speed up some internal efficiencies, and speed up resolution for our players. But what we learned is our players were actually quite smart in recognizing that they were talking to AI. And our players or our customers are looking for a more genuine connection with us when seeking support. So that almost backfired in a way. And I think that's one of the key things that we learned from that is that, you know, as efficient as AI can be for certain areas of support, when our players need a more genuine connection and experience, it wasn't effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting too about finding that balance of the example I would like to give is people will search things or share things with a Google search bar that they at times wouldn't even share with their spouse. So it's not that people are nervous about engaging in technology with certain things, but there's a right way and a wrong way, or a right time and a wrong time to do it. And so it's a question of, you know, when and how that customer is engaging, what's their intent, what's their outcome, what's their objective. Is that the right place to be using self-service for those efficiencies or scalability, or is it something that they really do expect to have a higher touch experience? And that's going to vary, once again, by customer, by use case, by channel.
Yeah.
So I think that is a good example of kind of being cautious or thoughtful as you enter the waters.
And I think the slide that you used with the British Airways experience at the beginning, where the customer called out their advisor team for not even knowing that he already followed them. Obviously, that became a very disingenuous experience for him. So we learned through this experience that we want to avoid those situations.
Yeah, exactly right. That's spot on. So those are good. I think both of you have done a really nice job of kind of giving us some real examples. Let's push a little further into the world of AI. You know, David, you kind of teed this up here, but into AI and machine learning and how the opportunity, but some of the challenges that may come along with it. So I'm wondering, Mary, if you could talk a little bit about how you're looking at AI and where you see opportunities or challenges with leveraging it for your business.
Absolutely. I do feel that one of the foundations that we started with is trying to understand that in conventional channels, a customer meets with a live person, and that person usually listens and takes action. So the ability to recreate that experience digitally, but yet also truly evoke empathy is one of the biggest challenges that AI and machine learning have to face. So the way we're envisioning it is that we need to create our chatbot with capabilities to be more than program responsive. And one of the ways we're looking at that is focusing on the tone of voice, both in our communication strategy and our interaction design. And with creating a personality as well, you know, not just in our content and copy, but being able to use maybe blinks and winks to make it more personable, and having these experiences build up within the intents that ladder up to these voice tenets. And we focus on making it friendly, casual, trying to evoke that it's trustworthy and personalized. So in short, we can't just focus on content without having that foundation. So I don't know, like creating signals of empathy to our customers while also communicating the persona we created for our chatbot. Like one of the examples that come to mind, say a customer comes to us and they say they don't have HBO. We would design that initial response to relate to customer more empathetically and like a way to remedy their frustration. So utilizing a friendly response such as, I love HBO too, I can help you with that. And we're leaning more towards the I and the pronoun use because that indicates active listening, attention, and understanding. And then inversely, that persona is the character that embodies our voice and tone tenets, which in turn helps us to overcome the empathy challenges we need to communicate to our customers digitally.
That's great, and I like to relate it to things that we all universally can feel and experience. And you think over the last 10 years, if you've ever flown a Southwest flight, Southwest hires and develops a certain type of personality to their flight attendants. And if you're on a regular flight, everything's on time. You get on and it's entertaining and engaging and memorable when they create a really fun experience. But at the same time, if you're 3 hours delayed, they've lost your luggage, you don't want to walk up to the customer service counter and the person's maybe being overly folksy or overly funny. And so there's this understanding of when is the right time and the right intent and the right objective where you can create a little brand stickiness and brand memorability and things that are kind of delightful, whereas at the same time you don't want to have those delightful experiences shoved in someone's face when they just want an answer or when they're super upset. And using things like and using more personalized language can help in those really hard times, but also can make those delightful experiences all the better. So I think that those are great examples of where we're more personalizing that content, both in a brand way, a memorable way, but also in something that's more direct related to that specific issue, are really great examples of delivering a better experience. Ryan, I'm wondering if you'd like to add on to this in the work you guys are doing at Blue Cross Blue Shield regarding artificial intelligence and machine learning.
Yeah, thank you. I'll start with an example related to something you mentioned in your opening remarks and connected to how chatbots and AI impact the role of human agents. We're right now piloting an AI assist as a chatbot for our member advocates to help them retrieve information faster, create a better call experience for customers, of course. This is right now not an automated chatbot. It is manual. So we've got a lot of ongoing learnings in terms of content, what it means for member interactions and evaluation. We found limitations in the knowledge and understanding by our member advocates about the set of questions that they can ask. And there was a lot of focus on the categories and the types of questions, but what we lacked going into that was an ontology for how users ask those questions. We found that there was some significant impact on the member interactions. Often the AI assist caused advocates to stumble and sometimes not so gracefully recover because they're trying to handle something new. They're essentially talking to two different sources, and so there was some guessing going on, or they'd get stuck in this I don't understand loop with the bot. And so we learned that it's really important to provide an easy way for them to get back to one of the known question paths, such as a button or a quick link. And it's been really interesting to understand how to get better at evaluation and measurements. It might be obvious, but making sure that we're capturing what questions customers, members are asking, and translating that to what an agent, right, what a member advocate might ask a bot. And so there's a little bit of translation in terms of how best to create the experience and address the question or concern of a member. But then thinking about that through the lens of an advocate, they might know how to or how to the taxonomy of where that information might lie. So there's a little bit of a kind of a chain that needs to be discovering, and then building the capture and teaching the system into the workflow has been difficult. So documenting, Ryan, as you were saying, like what questions is the bot failing to answer? What questions are being asked a lot? What other questions do we need to support? that has been hard to wrap into the workflow of our agents. And then I'll kind of close with a quick mention on there's a lot of room for really digging into the rigor of the psychology behind developing those CUI interfaces, and much to what Mary was talking about, thinking through what it's like to have turn taking, with a bot. What latency makes sense, right? There's this cadence of you talk, I talk, thinking about things as subtle as introversion and extroversion. Extroverts typically have shorter latencies, so a smaller distance between call and response. Introverts have longer latencies. So they're just really interesting things to consider, both in kind of the cadence and the back and forth, but also kind of those phatic expressions and those non-lexical things, passing phrases, those types of things that are so often used, and in our case might be a whole lot different by a call center agent, by a member advocate, than maybe if this were member facing.
Yeah, those are great. I think you bring up a number of good things. There's like the content aspect of it, of like, are we really understanding the intent and the outcome and then the content associated with it? Then there's the user experience of, does it feel natural? Am I answering too quickly? Am I answering too slowly? I mean, too quick a response can seem weird too, because then the person's like, well, is this really the right answer? Or they just give me some answer. And then there's then the employee aspect of it, of, is it saying the same thing as the employee would be saying, or can our employees access the same information that our customers can? I think that's often a real challenge of, you think about a physical retail store or many physical locations. Oftentimes the customer has better access to information than the employee does, and that the customer is walking in with a smartphone that can give them instant access to whatever, and they've done their research, and then they're asking the employee a question, and the employee, doesn't even have the same level of access to that information for whatever reason, whether it's security reasons or, implementation reasons. But so I think you bring up a lot of really good opportunities, but also challenges that come along with a technology like AI. I'll just pause here. Does anybody else have anything else they'd like to add, or other comments they'd like to make regarding anything that was said? Okay, and just a quick note to the audience, we have about 15 or so minutes of additional questions I'll be walking the panelists through. If there's questions you have that have come up, please feel free to submit those via the chat, and we have time at the end of this to answer those additional questions. So please feel free to ask questions related to anything I or any of the panelists have talked about. So once again, all of you bring a really good breadth of expertise from a customer experience perspective. And I think all of us have kind of been through the ringer, I'm sure, on things we thought were going to go well and did not. So I want to talk about some opportunities where you've transformed a failure into a win, and what were some things you did to turn it around and ultimately kind of turn it into a win. So David, can we start with you about where are some places where you've had challenges, or where something maybe didn't go as you expected, and how you turned that around?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the gaming environment from EA Sports perspective very complex, as we're handling millions of microtransactions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So there are a number of things that can go wrong at any given time. I think one of the areas that's been of particular concern with our player community over the past couple of years is with what we would call lag latency or connectivity reliability. To play our games effectively from a competitive standpoint, which most of our core customers are extremely competitive and engaged, relies on stable internet connections. There's a myriad of things that can go wrong with internet connections, whether that's related to our infrastructure or external infrastructure, and that also depends on the location of the player. So and our community is very vocal. So we did have processes in place to try and help or resolve connectivity issues for players, and we were clearly missing the mark. And what we now do is through our own data sources and data inputs and feedback and social forums, when we know our players are frustrated not only with our services but also our customer experiences to help them. One of the best practices that we default now is we go to player journey mapping, and we look at the existing processes to support those players. We look for any existing friction points. We try to identify what would make a player feel good, what would make them feel neutral, what would make them feel negative. And then we'll work with the product development teams or studios, and we will re-engineer that journey map or that customer experience journey for the player to remove as many friction points as possible. Looping that back to some previous topics, one of the things we're currently trying to do an experiment with is in-game support, so that if we notice a player is having connectivity issues while playing, we'll be able to, using AI, proactively help them troubleshoot in-game so that they don't have to exit the game and contact us. And we're hoping that more proactive approach and real-time support helps with engagement and obviously lifetime value. So I think I threw a lot of information into that answer. It's quite a complex topic for us, but it's also probably the biggest issue we face today.
Well, and what I really like about that, David, is that you're seeing, like, people talk a lot about customer journey maps, and I think they can be very valuable, but I think it's sometimes become more of a buzzword than anything. But I like what you've done there is you've said, hey, there are friction points we know that exist, and we know that a big thing for our user base is being connected and being in the game. So it's like, it's about that experience and not disrupting them from that experience. So you said, well, where are those friction points? And then how can we use tech to insert ourselves when it's appropriate to then keep them in the game, but then solve their problem right there? And I think that's what is a great example of, it may not be that someone's going to come to your website and want to use a chatbot versus calling or want to use a new channel because the existing channels service them well. It's like just because you build it doesn't mean they're going to come. But if you build it and put it in a place that's less friction or more convenient or more aligned with their workflow, then they will use it. And so I think that's a nice thing for people to think about of, well, where are there places where someone already is, and by giving them better access to information through AI or through a new channel of engagement, you now can help service them better. And so I think that's something that people miss. It's not just about replacing the way you're doing work today, but finding new ways to engage that are less frictionless, require less friction, easier, faster, et cetera. So I think that's a really good example.
Yeah, and I think if I can just add to that, we call this, I guess what I would call it, to use simple terms, is real-time customer experience. So using data to actually acknowledge that we know they have a problem as quickly as they do, and then fixing that problem for them automatically so that they don't even have to do anything. And that's where we want to head and where we're heading.
That's great. Jerry, I'll ask you the same question around areas that you ran into some challenges or ran into a failure, and what you did to help turn that around.
Sure. It's really interesting, David, to hear your example of how you're using journey mapping there. And so thank you. I'm taking notes, and I have some ideas from that. I have kind of a I learn. So I have kind of a different. I'll credit you. a different answer, though, for Lenovo of how we approach this, and maybe instead of talking about a specific challenge, I would just say, in general, we do closed-loop feedback process for real at Lenovo, and particularly focused on closed-loop with our B2B customers. So when I say closed loop, if anyone's not familiar with that, what that means is if we hear from a customer that we respond to that customer. So whether the feedback is positive or negative, we strive for 100% response rate to close the loop. So in that, what we're doing programmatically is relentlessly tracking and reporting on our responses, both positive and negative. And then we are very proactively doing analysis of those issues for root causes. So our focus, in terms of particularly with issue and response, is how quickly are we closing the loop, how completely are we closing the loop, and making sure that we are using our CX platform and the tools that are available to us to track that and communicate the responses, and kind of like all of us, kind of holding hands together, making sure that whether it is a supply chain related issue, a vendor issue, a sales related issue, a delivery issue, that we have a network of focals, we call them, across the globe who are able to, in language, very quickly respond to whatever the issue might be.
That's great. What I like about that also is that, no, that's good. And what I like about that also is that it's an audacious goal in the sense of like interacting with every customer, recognizing and replying, for lack of a better term, every customer that you engage with, or acknowledging and then creating action around every customer engagement. If you think about the world today, there's so many opportunities for customers to engage. So I like that while it's an audacious goal, you take it and say, okay, well, how can we approach this in a reasonable way that will work in our cost structure and deliver better experiences. And I think sometimes we probably don't set those goals as far as we should. We take too much of an incremental approach, which is still good to learn, but I think it's nice to kind of take that broader initiative. And it's something you're saying, hey, this is how we run our business, and therefore how are we going to support that? So I really like that as an example of a way you can really rally the organization, and then figure out what's the way you're going to go accomplish it or achieve it, in the short term and in the long term.
Well, yeah, Ryan, and I just one more thing to kind of put a finer point on it. That particular measure is reported to the president of the company on a monthly basis. So when I was talking about all holding hands across the globe, that helps. It definitely helps.
Yeah, and I mean, I always like to, it can be a little cliche, but like, to me, it's you are what you measure. And if your president's looking at that, then it shows the importance to the organization. And then once again, it just then drives alignment across the organization. So that's great. So I'll keep us moving through a couple more topics that I wanted to make sure we touch on. And so we've talked a lot about kind of, opportunities with transformation and where there are challenges, but also opportunities. I want to continue down this thread of kind of digital and digital experiences. And in today's world, customer experience is so focused on digital. I think there's still this balance of how do organizations ensure that things still feel personalized and that there's emotional connections and that there's still a good established connection with the customer. So Mary, you talked about this earlier of, some of the language you're using and how you're thinking about things like chatbot engagements. So can you talk a little bit more about, how you're ensuring that you're still delivering a really personalized experience, even though it's digital and maybe done at scale?
Absolutely. So we talked about, this ties a bit to the AI challenges we discussed earlier around the human-centered experiences. And I alluded to empathy, but I think we need to pivot further and focus a bit on authenticity. I believe, David, you brought up a great point earlier where you called out the challenges with authenticity, and without it, there can be dire consequences with poor experiences. And one of the ways we are solving for this is through customer identity, tracking their customer preferences, and then also focused on contextual memory. For example, one of the things we're focused on, it's kind of wordy, it's called asynchronous cross-channel conversational experiences. So essentially, it's just a way we have a conversation resume from one channel to the next from a single intent. So in order to create this experience, we essentially focus on not just the experience, but the technology to capture all this information. And remember, if a customer, what their preferences are, of course, calling them out by name, tracking any previous issues resolved or revisited, and or if they're a novice or an expert, so we can really tailor this personalized response to them and their situation. And I believe with these key data points that we're focused on, that's how we'll be able to solve for that personalized experience and challenge through digital.
That's great, and that feels like the right approach of, just like an agent, or just like if you walked into a physical store and you met with someone, if you came back, an hour later, and you said, hey, remember I was in an hour ago and we talked about this, there'd be some recall of that person of saying, oh yeah, of course. Or if you call into a contact center, there's that history of the last conversation. And so I think we want that same level of, we don't have the goldfish effect where, the bot comes back 3 seconds later and it's like, wait a minute, I'm back in the same spot. What was I doing? And so I think there is this, making it personalized and relatable. Sorry, Mary, were you going to say something else?
Oh, no, I was saying exactly, and that's kind of like how we're trying to emulate is what it would be like if a person went into a store, came back, or if they stopped, doing a fix and they came back, because people can't always complete their task. So that's our same approach as well.
Yeah, that's great. And then Ryan, for you, you touched on this a little bit earlier, but you talked about some of the work you're doing, Blue Cross Blue Shield. I guess, how are you thinking about this from keeping it personal, keeping it mostly connected, while still doing it at scale with a digital experience? I don't know if I lost Ryan there. Ryan, you might be on mute.
Oh,
maybe.
Sorry about that. Yep.
Okay.
I'll keep it short. I know we're coming up on time. If you're not familiar with BJ Fogg's work in persuasive technology, he's got a nice model that he calls the functional triad to think about technology as a tool that increases capability, technology as a medium that creates experience, and technology as a social actor that creates relationship. And I think that typology has been really helpful for me as I've kind of come in. I'm still, rebuilding the practice and keying into and building relationships into the rest of the organization, and having a framework to help guide our conversation around what ought to be, digital, what ought to be more person to person, and then how to extend that person to person into the digital has been really helpful.
That's great, and I love like taking. There's a little bit of static on the line. I'm not sure if it's from my end, but I love taking that kind of approach of how do we take broader design thinking and bring it to the world of digital. Not there's a lot of design thinking in digital, but I think we can take broader constructs and apply them. And then the other thing you mentioned I really like is how do you think about across the broader org, because you may know it's the right thing to do, but how do you get everybody lined up to be in support of it? Because we have a lot of different moving pieces of marketing teams and contact center teams and customer service teams and care teams, and they all kind of have their own perspective on the world. So how do we both get the technology and the process lined up, but also getting the broader organization lined up? So I know we probably could talk for another half an hour, but I will pause it there, and I want to make sure we leave time for folks to ask questions. So why don't we take a quick pause, and Julia, you can bring up some of the questions that were asked by the audience, and I can fill in as needed with some additional questions.
Thank you to the panelists and Ryan for doing a great job moderating. We are now going to review some of the questions that were submitted by the audience during the discussion. So the first question we have is for Ryan. You mentioned in your opening remarks that there's a difference between book and booking. Do you see that giving the client both options and then pressing buttons to select which is a better experience? If so, what company does that today?
Yeah, great question. So there's kind of three ways you can build an experience. One way is having it very closed and structured. So, for example, we do a project with Dyson where they have some very nice hair dryers, and they're like 10x the price of a hair dryer you'd buy at your local convenience store, but they're, for people that buy them, they love them. But if they buy the wrong product, they don't really get excited because they've spent a lot for it. So they have a very predefined flow where it's button-based, and basically you're answering a bunch of questions to help you find the right product. So some things work well with buttons. Others, you can choose a mixture of both buttons and freeform. So you can say, hey, if we think the intent is this, around book versus booking, we can then give them the choice to then say, do you mean book or do you mean booking? Because those two items are close and the way they're phrased might be close, and then we give them that discrete option. You can also do that through things like carousels. There's a variety of ways you can create a UI to help support refining and selecting the right intent. Another option is you can ask follow-on questions. So you've said this is what I think you mean, is that true? And the customer can say yes or no. So there's a variety of choices. It really comes down to you and kind of how you want to drive that experience, and also where is it happening. Is it happening on your website? Is it in a mobile app? Is it happening through something like an Alexa? And so really that comes down to the channel and what's the best form for that channel. So that really comes down to you and how close those intents are. If you do sell books and you do book flights, then you may want to give them the option. A common one that we see this for is like sales versus service. So someone says, hey, I have a question about a product, and you say, okay, is that a sales question? Like, are you trying to buy? Or is this a support question where you have it and you own it today? That's a really common one we see, and typically that'll be button-based. So we're trying to direct them down a path, and we're very deliberate about how we want to direct them forward. Oh, and who offers it? Our company does with Boat 360, and you know, a lot of the kind of major players out there that have conversational experiences would offer that as well. Any good platform should give you the ability to do buttons and do text-based entry.
Great, thank you, Ryan. So our second question is, how do you decide the balance between self-service and the cost of having an actual human talking to the customer? Does it depend on the product? How much is the company willing to invest, et cetera?
So I'll open up to the panel.
I can talk to that. Yeah. I think. Well, I'm going to talk to it from EA Sports gaming perspective. I think that depends on the audience and the customer that you're wanting to provide a seamless service to. I think from our perspective, our community actually prefers self-serve options. They see it as faster. They want that control. So we strive to constantly develop self-serve options. But I can imagine. And that is more effective, and it is actually more efficient because you're using technology instead of humans. But I think, and again, you know, I imagine some other members of the panel may have a different answer because they're serving a different audience.
I would say that you know one way that you could determine that. So there's kind of a breaking point as to what people can self-serve. Let's say it this way: what incident types can people be successful in self-serving, and where's the limit of that? And it's hard to discern that because there are some things where people simply can't self-serve, and that's kind of the example that I was bringing up at the beginning of the call. So if I could design an experiment, I would look at repurchase rate, and kind of look at support incidents prior to repurchase rate and see when people self-serve, did they repurchase? And do they repurchase at the same rate when they had a human service level? That might be a kind of a clue as to how you could discern where's the breaking point, where if people are unsuccessful in serving, that they won't repurchase. That's an idea for you.
Yeah, I just to build on that, I really like that. We always say the data will usually tell you where you should be self-serving or offering more self-service. So like, a simple thing we do is we have this thing called a voices dashboard, and it basically clusters by intent what are the most frequent intents that you would see from users or from your user base. And so you can say, okay, well, do we want to segment by demographic? Sometimes millennials will prefer to self-service over, let's say, people that have been using phone as their mode of engagement their entire lives. Also, what channels do they like? Are they using a mobile app? Are they engaging via social channels? And that also can be a nice way to start introducing more self-service. But usually the data will tell you. If you look at, chat logs, call logs, intents, what are those intents? Where are they coming from? And then what would the path look like to deliver self-service? Is it going to require a crazy new workflow, or is it just redirect them to a link? And if it's redirect them to a link, then do that and get that out of your agent's work stream. So I think that oftentimes the data will tell you where customers are trying to get, what kind of answers they're looking for, where does that data live today, and how easy is it for you to get it in front of them.
Great, thank you guys. So it looks like we have time for one more question. So what is one best practice in building great customer loyalty? Do you think loyalty is greater than, less than, or of equal importance to satisfaction?
I can take an initial stab at that. Could you just repeat the question? I want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly.
Sure. The question is, what is one best practice in building greater customer loyalty? Do you think loyalty is greater than, less than, or of equal importance to satisfaction?
I think it goes hand in hand. I know within EA Sports we've been working hard to understand the impact on lifetime value of our players, the number, how they engage with our titles based on our satisfaction scores. And I think strategically it's important at the executive level that they understand the impact of customer satisfaction on revenue and profitability. So we are not there yet perfectly in terms of demonstrating that ROI, but we are very close. That would be my response to that.
I would build on that and say one thing that we're trying to do is find the one thing that seems to be a unifying organizing principle. For example, an analog that we're trying to learn from is the hospitality industry. What they have found is that when customers feel like they are cared for, when they feel like the hotel cares for their well-being, they are exponentially more likely to exercise loyalty and spend more. And so that is kind of, they've discovered this one thing, and that's what we've been looking at and trying to develop a trust index and to really dig into what that one thing is that can help us build loyalty. And of course, for us, it has very specific markets that are more important there for us. But that's what we're looking for, is kind of that bellwether to guide us.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is and I think also primary research, like asking your customers these kinds of questions is also invaluable. There's kind of the broader macro data, but also, NPS, continuous customer surveys, sitting down with your best customers and better understanding them and where their needs are going is also, to me, you don't want to over market research, but doing primary market research is also really valuable. Getting that voice of the customer through a variety of ways.
I would add to that, Ryan, focusing on ethnographic there, because often people have a very hard time expressing and articulating their values and preferences, which really underscore what is keeping them attached to you emotionally and coming back again and again. So I think really, to your point, we have to get under the hood from an ethnographic perspective. Just asking outright is not going to get you there.
Yeah, good point.
Great. Thank you, guys. So this concludes the end of our session. I just want to thank everyone for joining us today for this fantastic virtual event. Thanks again to our awesome speakers, and I hope that everyone enjoys the rest of your day.
Thank you.